Welcome to the new Overlords Podcast, where we talk about video games and why they are the way they are. I'm Max, and with me, as always, is the vessel of chill vibes, not hatred, chill vibes in this vessel, my co-host, Sema. Hello there, Sema.
I'll take that title. I like it.
Yeah, vessel of chill vibes.
Yes. I'm doing great. How about you, Max?
I'm having a hell of a good time. And hell yes, we have BCAV here as well to help talk about what a damn good time Diablo 4 is these days. You see what I did there? Hello, BC.
Hey, BC.
Hey, Max. Hey, Sema.
You're also not a vessel of hatred.
Also a vessel of coolness.
Yes.
A vessel of information about why Diablo 4 is both the way it is and why it's really good these days. So we're definitely going to get into that. Really great to have you back on. If people don't know, BC's been on before, both old friend of the show and friend of ours who I've hung out with in real life, and it's part of our guild that we play games with. But definitely you've been playing Diablo pretty much nonstop since launch, right?
Yeah, and I played the beta as well.
Yeah, so definitely a Diablo expert that I always call on and ask questions of when stuff comes up. So get into plenty of that.
And just to clarify, nonstop does not mean 24/7.
Yes, it does. This is video games.
Not other games.
This is Sparta. We never stop. 24 hours, but not in a row. That's us. All right, let's talk about some news though too.
Good news, everyone.
All right, first up in the news, just a little bit of a news update because we keep doing them here and there because we're getting closer to the announcement of the game, Contemplation Games. We put out another little post on our feeds and I reposted it and posted it in a couple places. Another introduction of a team member. So there's 6 of us, and this is the 5th introduction outside of myself. So four other people that have been introduced. The 6th one probably will introduce next week. Our other Unreal developer who's doing an awesome work. She's great. But this one was our music director. So our audio and music director is Keith Zizza. He's been in the games industry for a long time. He's worked with some of the game schools and been a professor. He's composed music and sound effects and done a sound direction for some really big studios and big titles too. So we're very pleased to have him on board. He's doing some really cool things for us. He set up this really cool mixing board for a couple of our effects where we can sort of tune different parts of it up and down, and it's sort of like multiple things going on. You can think of like ambient background music or ambient background sounds. So we're going to have some nature sounds going on. But depending on what's going on, different mix we can do dynamically with what he's set up for us. So it's super cool. His latest thing this past week is he's working on some sort of like chill lo-fi music to be playing in the background music for us, which I'm excited about. This is a thing that I could never do. You know, I can get by on a lot of things. Definitely on the development, I'm actually doing a fair amount of that in Unreal Engine. I can kind of model a little bit. I can't really draw. But music composition, although I've played music in my life and can play a couple instruments, I have no idea how to even start going about composing music. So I've done sound effects, but not music. So I'm really glad to have Keith on board. That's that. Couple more weeks. Stay tuned, and we'll do a game unveiling what the game is going to be. Just some teasers and some initial notes, and then more and more of that will come out over time, which I'm super excited about. But in other game news, cool things going on. So this I just threw in because it's sort of like the game of the moment. I don't know if you guys or anyone in the chat room has played a lot of Persona games, but the same people who brought us the last few Persona games, Persona 3, 4, and 5 in particular, they have put together a new game in the same style. Not in the same setting, but in the same style. So it's that anime turn-based RPG that's very story-heavy and includes that idea of friendship bonds and building those up over time and that kind of thing. But the reason it caught my eye was two things. One, it's sort of like the highest rated new release of the last month, and it's hot, and everybody is talking about it. And the second is it's called Metaphor Refantasio. That's the title. That's the name. I don't know if this is translated from something else, and that's 3 words, by the way. It's Metaphor Refantasio with an F. That's quite a mouthful. I guess, we're getting to that era where I've experienced this. All the names are taken. So if you want to have a new game, you got to make up new words and string a bunch of words together. You can't even just make up a new word. You got to make up multiple words and add them all together and string them together and crazy, happy, fun robot fight shoot kablarble. That's going to be my next game. So do you guys ever play these kind of, BC, do you ever play this kind of RPG, these sort of turn-based, story-driven anime RPGs? I mean, even Final Fantasy fall into this category. You ever play many of those?
I haven't. I played Baldur's Gate back in the day, those
Mhm.
kinds of classic RPGs, but nothing anime inspired like that. Does sound fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. The closest I've come is I actually watched Sword Art online.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's a version of that kind of concept. This is that with the spin of the turn-based combat, that's very core to this genre, and then the anime style, and then the big stories. So in theory, this has got a really interesting story too. It's grounded in power and inequality and injustice in the world and that kind of thing. So they're definitely coming at it with a point of view, sort of a political point of view within the politics, told within the politics of the fantasy world that they're living in, but real world sort of politics story point of view that they're trying to get across too. Anyway, that's fun. Also, then in game release, not a lot of big game news this week, not a lot of dramatic stuff, but a couple other game releases that we've been talking about, and I added one more to the list that I don't know why we weren't talking about it, but this we'll probably talk about next week, is New World Aeternum. So New World Aeternum is a re-release kind of New World. New World had an expansion, Angry Earth, that's really good, and you still kind of need to buy that expansion if you want some of that stuff, but New World Aeternum, if you are an existing New World player, you don't have to buy Angry Earth, you get Aeternum. What the main point of the release of Aeternum is bringing in consoles. So Xbox, PlayStation, it is now available on those. And with that, they've launched a couple new sort of fresh start, new servers, new worlds. So a lot of people are having fun with that. Going to jump in a new world and sort of start from scratch again. And then there's crossplay on those new servers. I think there's even servers that are console only if you want to limit yourself to console players. But it's to have a whole new crowd of new players coming into the world and be able to play in a new world with them. All along the life cycle of the game, through the expansion, all of the base game has been sort of refined as it's gone on as well. Has it been refined enough? A lot of people have been criticizing New World over time because they feel like the end game wasn't enough for them, and it's a lot of the hardcore players. And it's the classic bit of feedback of, I played this game for 500 hours straight and now I have nothing left to do. Why is this game so terrible? And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy then if you have an MMO and everybody who played for 500 hours for 18 hours a day says, oh, this is terrible, we should all quit. Well, then everybody does all quit. But it also makes me think, it puts us in an interesting position. And I keep hearing this brought up as an example of such a quote unquote failure where they only have 3,000 concurrent users a day. How bad is that they've fallen so far? And it's judged from how far they've fallen. Because, if you had 50,000 concurrent users at launch and now you're down to 3,000, wow, you're such a failure. But if you've got 3,000 people that are enjoying your artwork and your product a day, since launch, that sounds to me, now if they're not paying the bills, that's a problem. That's a different problem though than is the game a successful game for the people that like it. That sounds to me to be perfectly acceptable and fine. And I don't think we should describe something that 3,000 people a day are enjoying as a failure in my mind. as an indie game developer who might have 3 people a day enjoying our game next year. We'll see. What I
But
mean,
also, I mean, there are a lot of people who play MMOs the way you do, which is level up to max level and then go to the next game.
mhm. And I would call that successful.
Yeah.
If I had fun doing that and then being able to dip back in, like with this, I played quite a bit of New World, but then I stopped. I played a ton of it. I probably did one of those where I kind of like no lifed it for 300 hours or whatever, and then kind of stopped playing. But I would never look back at it at that point and say that that was bad. In
Right.
fact, quite the opposite. If it was bad, I would have played 3 hours or not even that and been done. So as I rate MMOs,
I mean, even then, what you would say is it wasn't for you.
yes, I would say it's not for exactly. It's not for me. And it's unfortunate if a game is not for anybody, but almost no game is not for anybody.
Yeah.
So this game definitely is for me. When I want to play an MMO, this is near the top of my list. I really like the art direction, the rendering of the world, both in how you play, how the combat works, just the art and the tactile nature of how the world is rendered and realized. The Lumberyard engine that they're using, which is now Amazon owns, I think is amazing, and I would love to see tons more games implemented in it. It just, to me, it feels really, really good. It feels like one of the most modern MMOs out there, and I really like it for that reason. And I would rank it in my list of where all the current MMOs stand very high, very high. So your mileage may vary, but a lot of people are having it fun right now because it's sort of like open at launch with these new servers and new opportunities. You know who doesn't like it? Who criticizes it the most, which happens in every game, is the PvPers. Because PvP is very, very hard in an MMO. It's very hard to balance. It's very hard to keep fresh. It's very hard to make part of, like, an arena part of an MMO is fine. And that you can, if there's even tricks to like balance it a little bit more. And if that players sort of create their own content. But when you try to add it into the open world, all MMOs just seem to struggle with this. And I don't know why they continue to chase it. Well, I do know why.
One thing I don't know is who are the PvPers? Are they MMO players that enjoy PvP, or are they coming from other games that
Yeah.
don't like the MMO part of it, the progression and the millions of abilities,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, the cooldowns.
Exactly. If you're a fighting game, if you're a PvP game fan, you should be playing Overwatch or Fortnite. Those games are designed around the balance, and they're designed around making sure things work well. And there's rock, paper, scissors in some cases, but they're designed around that. And they can shortcut a lot of other things, and they can change the meta, and that's all fine. And they don't have to balance against PvE elements of the game. Whereas in an MMO, you're sort of like serving multiple masters and pleasing none of them in a lot of those cases when PvP is involved.
Yeah, that was my experience with Elder Scrolls Online, where I played a lot of PvP, open world PvP, and in Cyrodiil. And the complaints usually from the PvP community were just that you haven't made any updates, you've added no content to PvP in 2 years, 3 years, etc. They're actually releasing a big new update to PvP, and so that community is very excited about it. but there were years where there were no updates to Cyrodiil. There was no new PvP content, and so balance wasn't even the biggest factor. Although it is difficult to try to balance PvE and PvP. It was mostly just the lack of content, and that's because the PvP community is smaller, so it's never a top priority. And when PvP content is introduced, the PvE community doesn't like it because they don't want to participate in that, and there are more people playing PvE. So there's quite a lot of different PvP activities in Elder Scrolls Online. They have, there's not just Cyrodiil; that they have arenas and everything as well. And there's also there's a second sort of something similar to Cyrodiil as well. Name escapes me. I haven't played Elder Scrolls Online for a while now, but even then, people would get through it pretty quickly. It's the same old problem, and then move on to other games. I had a blast for maybe a year solid a while back. I just played PvP all the time in Elder Scrolls Online. But
Yeah.
then after about a year or so, I'd done it all. So I moved on and played other games. And my experience was most of the PvPers didn't seem to be people who were playing Overwatch or other PvP games like that. They were people who were interested in the MMO experience, and they liked that sense of progression. I can earn my gear and craft on it and improve my character over time, and then take them out and kill people. So I think there is a different audience. It's just smaller.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's hard to keep up with the content for every single segment of people that are playing your game.
Yeah.
And I think there's also I mean, this is just speculation on my part, but I think that developers have this sense that PvP makes its own content, and so it's valid for it to be on a slower schedule, content delivery than
Yeah.
the rest of the game.
Which sometimes PvPers don't agree with,
Yeah,
but
right. Sounds like it.
but like, we want a new arena map. Okay, well we could it's still work. And then that's not the content. The content is you fighting other players. And why you are the content. So if you want new content, go be the content.
Right.
I could see wanting new scenery, I guess, but
yeah, I can too. And I also, they should, if that's all it takes, they should definitely do that. Like every time in Star Wars they introduce a lair boss, why can't some version of that be a PvP map also?
True, a little arena of some kind. Yeah. It's interesting. And that's probably a deeper discussion for another time, but yeah, that came to mind. Because also PvP related, there's a fair amount of Call of Duty PvP, but Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is coming out. That was one of the games that is releasing this month that hasn't been on our release date list. I'm kind of fascinated. I haven't played Call of Duty in a long time. I played it before. I haven't played it in a long time. And doing a lot of interesting things with Call of Duty these days, and Black Ops 6 and the zombie mode, and that's coming out. This is one of the most popular games in the world, on the planet. This is like So this is getting released on October 25th, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So we shall see how it does. It's weird. It's a high quality game. It's a AAA game. It's it goes back and forth. I mean, people say, "Oh, this was a terrible Call of Duty," and only 1 billion people played it. That's how bad it was. Can you imagine? But do you know anybody who plays Call of Duty regularly? How about you, BC? Do you play Call of Duty, or do you know anyone who does?
I have some friends who play Call of Duty.
Okay.
And similar games.
Because somebody does.
My brother still dabbles in the time that he has. So yeah, I know a few people. No one who plays hours and hours of it anymore. But I played a lot of Counter-Strike and things like that back in the day. So I guess I switched. Never played Call of Duty. So I'll have to check it out. I'm missing out.
Yeah. I played a little bit of Call of Duty, but I played more things, especially back in the day. I played a lot more like Halo. That was my fighting game. I was sort of in the Microsoft days.
Yeah. I'm so, far away from either of those games. I just consider them the same, Halo and Call of Duty.
Yeah, and the military shooters are a specific thing. The zombie mode is what I'm actually kind of like most interested in a lot because of that arachnophobia mode, which I keep talking about. I would maybe dabble. I might try this out. I wonder if it's going to be on Game Pass. I forgot about that. Does anyone know if it's going to be on Game Pass? Will COD Black Ops 6 be on Game Pass? Google autocomplete. Players will require a Game Pass Ultimate subscription. It will be on Game Pass on launch day. All right. Maybe you and me, Sema, we're going to be trying it out.
Let's get in there. I'll probably shoot you, though.
You will. I'm sure you will. No doubt about that. Can't wait.
Someone's gonna clip that.
Is there a
I'll
Sema
probably shoot you. You definitely will.
I need a Semaphobia mode because I'm afraid of Sema coming to shoot me. Another game which a lot of people that I do know are quite excited about and will be playing, that's coming out at the end of the month on Halloween, which we keep talking about, is Dragon Age: The Veilguard. This one I'll be playing certainly in between trick-or-treaters coming to the door. If they do, which they haven't been as much in recent years, we'll get back to this one, I'm sure, and dive deep into it on the podcast in the weeks following October 31st. The day after Halloween, which of course then is 100% Christmas, full-on Christmas season, which I don't believe. No Christmas carols until after Thanksgiving dinner. You can do it like that night, even. And on the drive home from Thanksgiving dinner at a relative's house, we sometimes have Christmas carols, but none up until then.
What's the earliest you can watch Die Hard?
Oh, that would have to get into the debate about is Die Hard actually a Christmas movie. So
I know that's
if you're watching it because you think it's a Christmas movie, you can't watch it until after Thanksgiving. If you're watching it because it's a good movie, which happens to have a little bit of Christmas around it, it's kind of a Christmas movie though. I mean, there is an argument. I'm not on the side that it's not a Christmas movie. But if you're watching it because it's because it's Die Hard, you can watch it anytime you want. All right. So that's our game news. As always, thanks to all of you out there for following and listening. Thanks to the over 1,000 people who watched our video last week's podcast episode, which I have YouTube algorithm apparently went crazy because we're an audio podcast. So most of our listens are listens. We get like 50 views on the, 50, 60 views on the videos. It was over 1,000 last week. So I don't know what happened. I guess there was a dearth of Throne and Liberty videos. And because our podcast episode was titled Throne and Liberty, the algorithm picked it up and said, consume this. And I bet it was not what people were expecting when we didn't even talk about Throne and Liberty for the first 15 minutes of the show. But it was a good discussion on Throne and Liberty. I feel bad I didn't put chapter markers in so people could skip ahead. 1,000 views on that one. I don't know why. Anyway, thanks to everybody who's still with us after joining us from the Throne and Liberty episode. We did get even some new subscribers based off of that. I thought was interesting. And thank you to all of you out there that are hanging out with us live, either here or in our Discord. We talk about this kind of fun stuff, trade notes on books we're reading, like the new book, Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey, who's of the two authors that wrote The Expanse. It's not an Expanse story, and it's a new series that they've started. I like that. We're talking about that in the Discord. Join us anytime there. You can get to that, of course, at newoverlords.com. As always, also, don't forget, if you're looking for one of those big family-friendly gaming communities, we've got one of those for you. Sema and I, NBC, all play in Elea Iacta Est, AIE-guild.org for the AIE Discord information. If you want to talk about Diablo and who's playing that and join up for some of the the end game stuff, which I can't even name because that's what I haven't gotten into that we're going to talk to BC about right now. You can get in the Nomads channel, look for that. And then we've got ESO and we've got Star Wars: The Old Republic and all that kind of thing in there. So join us there as well. All right, Diablo, the game has changed, hasn't it?
Game changer.
Game changer.
Game changer?
Game changer for
Game changer for the industry.
It has changed, has it not? It has been changing pretty consistently over the course of the past year. Let's start there, BC. Even before this, before the launch, because that's what we'll talk about, and that's what I played. But how much have you felt like they've been making progress and changing the base game from launch up until this point where Vessel of Hatred came out?
There's been new content every season, and it was probably slower than people would have liked, but they've started to reach a point where they've hit a critical mass, and there's now a lot to do in the end game. It took them a little while to get going. Helltides might be a good example. It was in the base game. It was one of the best activities. By season 2, they had a better version of Helltide. They then rolled that into Helltide, and now it's something that you can grind away at, and there's lots of density. You get to kill lots of monsters, and it's a whole lot of fun. So it took them a little while to get going, but they're now starting to add whatever they've put in for each new season back into the base game and find ways to incorporate that. So when the game launched, to give folks a recap, there was really one endgame activity, Nightmare Dungeons. You could maybe count Helltides as an endgame activity as well. And then there was Uber Lilith, one endgame boss. And now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 endgame activities, and there's not just Uber Lilith. There's now 6 other endgame bosses. So it's significantly expanded, and that didn't all just happen in the expansion. I mean, they added a couple of those in the expansion, but there's been sort of a slow and steady but accelerating pace of adding content. So if people played when it first launched, got to endgame, thought, oh, great, I'm done. I've done everything. It's probably worth coming back because there's definitely lots of new fun stuff to play.
Yeah, I would say. And I never thought it was bad. Even at launch, I had a really good time. I really liked the design of the game. I liked the content. I really liked the campaign. I played it through. I even played through some of the end game, geared up, got some nice legendaries, and I didn't get into the season. So once the seasons came around and started, I wasn't in the mood to sort of like play through a season pass because I've got season passes in 15 other games that are clamoring for my attention as well. Since then, though, I've been waiting for Vessel of Hatred because, again, I really like the campaign. I really like the story elements of what they're doing as well. It's not the perfect environment to tell this kind of story. It's an ARPG with the capital A. It's very focused on action, and you'll not get a lot of that. It's not an RPG first, so you'll get some things that aren't aligned. Like you'll be done with the campaign, and then I got back to in the town, and they're talking about as if the campaign didn't happen yet. You get little things like that, but that's perfectly fine because it's an A first RPG. But the story itself and the characters, how compelling the story is and how it's rendered, I think is great. And I really liked the first campaign as well. In fact, the original campaign I think was very, very strong. The new campaign, we won't get into spoilers, but we will talk about it in a little bit. But let's start with where I started, which was there's a new class, right? So I rolled. So when you did the campaign, did you roll the new class, or did you play with your old class, or did you both?
I started with a new class.
So you started with the Spiritborn.
One because the Spiritborn is new, haven't played it yet, and second because it's probably 10 times more powerful than every other class right now, and so that makes it fun. The point of an action RPG is to kill lots of monsters very quickly, right? So
yeah,
I definitely started there. I think most people did, and from the look of our Discord channel on Diablo, people are having a lot of fun with it.
I can't. It's also very closely aligned with the zone that you're in and where the story is taking place and who you're talking to and the other characters in the story. I would, in fact, it might be interesting to just play for 5 minutes. I wonder how playing. You can start at level 1 with any of the characters. You don't have to start with a Spiritborn. You could create a new character, a level 1 sorcerer, and play. But so much of it is like talking about the sort of like the spirits and the spirit world, and you're part of it, and you're there too. So if you play it as a sorcerer or a necromancer, it seems like you would lose out on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's one of the aspects of the class that people like the most. In simplest terms, the mechanics of the class are it's a jungle monk. So take the monk from D3 and sort of make it Aztec inspired. But that actually adds a lot of value because it really seems to fit within the story. So if you're interested in the story and the lore, then it's a really neat fit. It fits right into the story in a way that really no class did in D3 or D4 until now.
Yeah.
And so that even though it's just a flavor, the class works mostly the same as the monk. That additional flavor, I think, at least for me, and really added a lot to the experience and the immersion.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And you level up really fast. So by the time they changed the level cap, so the level cap is no longer 100, it's 60. And by the time I was done with the campaign, I was 50. And that was just the core campaign. And there's even some like post-campaign priority quest stuff. And by the time I was kind of like done with all of that is about the time I was hitting 60. I had done a couple Helltides in there too. So maybe I was a little bit ahead because that'll give you a level or two. But it did feel like the right journey to be doing with a Spiritborn, and it felt like a complete journey because you were leveling up all the way to 50 or 60 as part of it too. So Tetsemi was the one who sent the note that I appreciated on the idea of you could start level 1 in any of the classes. You can also start level 1, which I did here with just starting the campaign at level 1 of the new story. So you're kind of with this new level 1 character skipping over the original story. There's some stuff though that you can go back and unlock. And I haven't done all of that, but even like unlocking the zones, I realized I can be doing that and probably will want to be doing that if I was going to be going long term with this character. Did you do much in the old zones with your Spiritborn yet? Did you like unlock all the, how you progress the zones? Because you get extra skill points and that kind of thing. Did you do much of that yet?
It's account bound, so
Is it?
so I already have all of those bonuses unlocked, so I don't need
Well, maybe I
to
have
go
them
back and do
unlocked.
them.
It's still. I have like all of the I 100%ed all the altars of Lilith, and they all showed up as grayed out on the map. But I'm still getting like, I don't think I'm getting anything for it. But if maybe I'm reading it wrong.
You can still level it up each new character that you create. It's just not giving you the bonuses at the bottom. So there's sort of 2 rows of
Okay.
bonuses, and the top row is like golden experience, and it's pretty trivial. And then the second row is the account wide stuff that really matters: skill points, paragon points,
Yeah. Okay.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I started with a ton of bonuses because of all of that. And I started with like, like 8 potions or or something like that, which is I've never used. And I'm playing on what mode did you start on? What mode did you play through the story on?
I just played through on normal because I wanted to enjoy the story, and
Yeah, that's what I did too.
there's not a huge benefit to getting the experience because it takes you longer to kill stuff. So it's pretty efficient to do on normal or hard. So yeah, I stayed there, and then we'll get into what I did after that later, probably when we start
Yeah.
chatting about end game. But I like that you're able to skip the campaign. I think it's the original campaign. I think it's pretty standard these days, but.
Yeah.
For anyone coming back, you don't have to play through all of that again. You don't have to
Yes.
redo the Altars of Lilith. You can skip the original story, and you'll get all of those unlocks just automatically if you did them once before.
Yeah, that I agree. That makes a ton of sense. And that idea of doing the campaign playing through the campaign on normal mode uh, also is pretty universal advice from anybody. I mean, you could do it on hard mode if you just are looking for a fun challenge, but completing the story missions, completing the sort of the story chapters, what gives you all of the experience. So the fact that you get like a 10% experience bonus for playing it in a harder mode is almost nothing. So there's not really a reward blasting through the story, enjoying the story. Either of those two, which are sort of contradictory, I realize, is what's all of like the videos out there sort of recommend doing that. So I'm playing the Spiritborn. All the armor that you get for the Spiritborn is very sort of like Aztec inspired. It looks like female armor for the historical female armor that only covers the quote unquote armor that only covers 10% of your skin. You basically every new armor piece is like a harness and a loincloth. I'm like, okay, I guess this is what and some sort of weird mask. But that's fine. So it's cool looking. It's very in style, in character. And then you get into the zone, and the main story is told in these new zones called Nahantu is the sort of like the main, there's sort of like the whole new continent area. And then there's a few zones within this. And you mentioned it already. It's Aztec inspired. There's sort of like the ziggurat style temples and the dais where the council of elders all sit, kind of almost, it looks like an Aztec calendar. And there's a lot of that kind of like artwork and art style, and your armor and your characters and how they look and all of that sort of seems to be rooted in that. It doesn't go too far. It's its own thing, certainly, but definitely inspired by that, I would say. Yeah, so what did you think of the zone and the art of the zone of Nahantu?
I really enjoyed it because it was quite different to the base game, the original 5 areas. A lot of people have said this. They were going for dark and gritty, so there's a lot of reds and browns and greys and things, which is great. That was right on theme. But for the expansion, it's nice to get some more green and and other colors in there, and a little bit of a different feel to the zone. Um, and there was also a little bit of D2 nostalgia. You go back to Kurast, and I would sort of notice things and think, oh wow, that reminds me of D2. So there was some fun moments like that, where it was a bit of a throwback to a game that I spent many hours playing when I was in high school. So I just liked it for the variety, and that there was a bit of lore behind it. I didn't spend a whole lot of time diving into that, but I liked that that was sort of the foundation of it. And as far as I can tell, I think everyone sort of says something pretty similar. I know when the game first launched, people were looking for something darker and grittier than D3, and so it's interesting that after delivering that, everyone sort of jumped back to, oh, yeah, it'd be good to have a bit of variety. So
Maybe a
too
little,
much of any one thing is just too much, right? You need a bit of
right,
variety.
right. And to be clear, it is sort of like nature and jungle, but it all wants to kill you still. It's all like poisonous and snakes and and
No wonder I feel
terrible,
at home.
terrible,
It's like
terrible
living in
things.
Australia.
Yes, it's very
Hey,
much like so, yeah.
was gonna say that, but I thought, no,
I can make the joke.
that's right.
You mentioned there's a lot of spiders. Is there an arachnophobia mode in Diablo? I should turn it on and see if there is. I'm fascinated by those. It keeps coming up. Uh, you mentioned mob density, and I did notice it in the outside world, but especially in Nahantu. And I've heard other people talk about the mob density being something they really like. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, for an action RPG, really the the trade off is how much mob density can I give you without crashing the servers? so everyone almost universally asks always for more mob density until their game crashes. So I think that isn't something that's just new with Nahantu. It's been a pretty steady increase over time. Helltide's got more and more density during the earlier seasons, and they've sort of kept tuning it up with Nahantu as well. The other thing that I like about it is they haven't just increased mob density, but with the expansion, the way that they redid the difficulties is as you start getting to the torment tiers, we'll talk more about later, the AI becomes more aggressive. So you'll notice as you go up the torment tiers that all of a sudden monsters just keep coming from off screen. And this fight that you thought would take a certain amount of time ends up taking way longer because monsters just keep coming at you from somewhere past the view of your screen. And I like that approach as well because you don't necessarily want 100 monsters right on your screen immediately, but it creates a real sense of danger, especially in the jungle. There's some narrow paths and these spiders keep coming at you from all different angles, and it feels like there's no let up. And I liked that as well. It's not enough to just increase the density, but making the monsters more aggressive and keeping them coming at you creates that sense of danger. A little bit more like some of the earlier Diablo games where the butcher would make a sound from off screen and you start going, "Oh."
Is the butcher still around in
He
the new
he does
content
show
too?
up. Yeah, he does show up in lots of different content. We'll talk about Infernal Hordes later. You can have multiple butchers on screen in that because you can, you can have the butcher randomly show up, but you can also deterministically get the butcher to show up. So it is possible to have two butchers at the same time on your screen,
Oh,
which
geez.
is kind of fun. Yeah.
That does not does not sound fun. Some definition of fun, I guess. Yeah, so I thought the mob density, I wasn't necessarily prepared for it, I guess. And now that I sort of get into it, get into the spirit of it, it's great. But at first I was like, I was walking. I was walking through. I'm going to walk through this area. They want me to go over here to find this, this little hole in the ground or this piece of evidence. I'm walking through. And it'd just be like, there was never a moment's rest. You couldn't even even if you killed everything, you had 6.2 seconds and then more would just start spawning and appearing. And it was, it's overwhelming. So if you don't expect that you could just walk around and explore nature. It's red dots. It's from end to end, sea to shining sea, red dots nonstop. And then they never go away. You never get to rest. So
Yeah, it's interesting hearing a perspective of someone who hadn't been going through that progression because I can see how it would be a bit of a shock, if you were playing originally to the way that it is now rather than it trickling in and sort of getting used to it. They're definitely looking to create that sense of danger. So if you play hardcore, port it down, please.
yes. Yeah, that's what you have to do. If you want to rest, you need to either ride on through, and you still get dismounted more than I ever used to before at launch. You ride on through to try to get to your objective, and if you're done, you port out. There's no sightseeing, which is one of the things that I kind of wish that there was, because I'm really into the art and the and the style as well. I wanted to look around, and we'll get to it. One of the places where it's the worst, but yeah, nowhere can you just wander around and check out the scenery. When you're in a dungeon, you can, because you can kill everything in a dungeon. And that's what I started to end up doing. I did a couple of the dungeons. And then I was like, you know what I like to do? I like to kill everything. And then I can look around. So I was doing that in the dungeons. Just kill everything. So the story itself, though, is a continuation of the launch story. So we won't spoil what happens in the story, but kind of, I guess this is technically a spoiler from launch. So I can skip over this next little bit if you don't want to hear, if you've never played it originally. But the end of the original story, we're fighting Lilith and Tyrael is the angel and Lilith is the demon. They're sort of them getting together is sort of what created Sanctuary and created this opportunity for humans and humanity to fight back against the war between heaven and hell. And Lilith wants to go further. She wants to both gain more power for herself. She wants to ultimately defeat the rest of the demonic horde so that they don't wreck her creation. And part of what she needs to do to make that happen is she kills Tyrael. But all throughout all of this, sort of behind the scenes and threaded through the story, Mephisto, one of the major demons, one of the, how many of the pantheon of demons are there? 6, 7, 8?
There's 3 prime evils.
3 primes, and he's one of the
Mephisto,
primes.
Diablo, and Baal.
Yeah. And then there's like
and it's Inarius, not Tyrael.
Oh, is that what I said? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tyrion's a guy though. He was something. Inarius is the one that. So she kills Inarius, and then we kill her, and then through all of that, Mephisto, who was sort of like coming back to life, reforming himself in hell, and trying to orchestrate behind the scenes the opportunity for him to sort of resurrect. And the story is Nerel, who was this young woman who was sort of like teaming up with us. We leave the decision to her. She traps Mephisto in a crystal and then takes off. She decides that now it's on her to carry this to some place where it can sort of like trap Mephisto and get him off the playing field, get him off the table. So we don't know what happened to her by the end of the first chapter, and that's what this whole expansion is kind of about. So the vessel of hatred is both the crystal that she's carrying and also her to some degree. So this is that story of where did Nerel go, what's she trying to do, and then can we catch up to her? Can we help her? There's a couple sort of side characters which are interesting as part of it, like where is the Cathedral of Light sort of gone at this point because Inarius was their leader and led them into hell, sort of like on a fool's errand and died. So now what's their deal? So that's like this guy and the mother superior, what's her name? Prava,
yeah.
Prava, she's around, so she shows up a little bit. But it's the Nerel thing. She ends up going through Nahantu, and that's where we get sort of like led in on her path. So what's your overall take on sort of like the kickoff of the story? Was this the sort of like what you expected? I mean, it kind of left it like this had to be the next chapter, in my view, in terms of story elements.
Yeah, I liked it. I think they're slowly building towards fighting Diablo at some point. I like that. I like that it's not just a black and white story. That you mentioned there's Prava and the Cathedral of Light, and they're not necessarily the good guys. and Lilith and Mephisto aren't necessarily either. Lilith may be trying to protect us, but goes about it in a way that's probably not great for a lot of people. So I liked that it's a little bit grey. And there's not necessarily good guys and bad guys. And I liked that they had this story of Nerel struggling with the stone. It brings back some thoughts about D1, D2, and earlier Diablo games, and how you would handle that sort of situation. The cinematics were amazing as always. Blizzard's best in class for that.
Yeah.
And the only objection I've really heard to the story, I think, is just that it was focused on Nerel, and so if people didn't connect with her as a character, they weren't that into it. But I liked her. I thought she was an interesting character, and I enjoyed it. I don't want to give any spoilers or anything for folks who haven't played it yet, but no, I felt like it was sort of a logical place to go with the story. I'm excited for the next chapter after this to sort of see where it goes from there.
It's definitely just a chapter. That's the other thing
right.
I've sort of heard the criticism, and I kind of feel too. Not in a bad way, but it's merely a next chapter. You could almost like if this was going to be like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I feel like the base game was the first movie, and I feel like this was the first third of the second movie, and not even a full second movie. It's kind of
I
where
agree.
I feel we're at.
Yeah, definitely just sort of another chapter.
Yeah. couple other cool things that are part of the story is the mercenaries. So there were no mercenary. Were there companions at all up to this point? I kind of missed that.
Not until now.
Okay.
No.
So they added this idea of these companions, and you can like, once you unlock them, there's one of 4. You get to pick one. You get to pick one that like comes along with you and just comes and tags along and fights. And you get to pick a second one that ends up like being like a bonus ability that gets charged up and discharged, and that companion kind of like jumps into the fight from nowhere, does their ability, and then jumps out, and then they're gone. But you pick like the main companion that's with you, and they might have some utility. They might fulfill a role. Like the one guy, Subo, lights up stuff on your mini map for gathering. The main guy is part of the story though. So Rahir is part of the story. What do you think of the companions? I got a kick out of them. I liked their stories, and I liked having them around.
Yeah, I've always liked the companions ever since D2 days, because I've mostly played these games solo, and so it adds another dimension to the solo experience. I like that they incorporated Rahir into the story, and actually I think one of the best parts of the story was that they incorporated a lot of the additional game systems into the story in a way that it felt like, oh yes, this makes sense, that it would happen now, and then when you finish the story you already understand the system. And so that was a sort of natural transition to have Rahir following me around. And then I also like that they innovated a little bit with the reinforcement mechanic that you mentioned. So I've got Rahir following me around because he increases your armor, and if you're playing solo, it helps you to hit the armor cap. But then you can have a second one who'll just jump in, and you can set a trigger condition. So if you're at low life, they're going to jump in. They're going to do some sort of crowd control, something to help you out, get out of danger, or whatever it is that you need. And so I like that they didn't just sort of put companions in the same way that they'd been previous Diablo games. They sort of added a bit of a new element to it, makes it interesting. And the great thing about reinforcements is you keep them even when you're in a 4-player group. So if you have 4 players, you also have 4 reinforcements.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, so it kind of adds another layer even to group play there, where you can sort of experiment and see what might be useful for different situations we're going to find ourselves in. So I really like that little piece of innovation. It's a small thing, but I just think adds another dimension for customization.
Yeah.
That I like.
And it's not even that small. Each one, it's only like maybe like a 20-minute story, but each one has a story, and you have to like go help them with their story to unlock them. Rahir is the biggest story, and it's really cool part of the main story too. But Varanya she's a barbarian cannibal, like ex-cannibal, and she's got kind of a rough story. Subo, the drunken archer, he's very cool in the same way that Nico Okar in Star Wars: The Old Republic. So I like his deal. And then Aldkin, the cursed child, who is like a half demon kid that is an orphan that you got to like track down and find out what's going on, just discover what even the deal, who even this creature is, and then becomes like one of the team. I think is really cool too. So yeah, and then the next the final sort of like member of the team is the dog. So I didn't realize that this was in before, right? The dog.
Or yeah, the dog's been in since. Yeah, the dog was added in season 5 before the expansion launched.
Yeah, so I got in, and one of the very first things that showed up on my screen, you get these little purple things that are like the priority quests. One of the very first things when I got to town, and I'm on my level 1 character, it says, "Oh, go pet the dog," and that's just what it said. And I did, and it's like, "Okay, you pet the dog. Now it's yours." And that's it. It wasn't like nothing, no story, nothing happened. But then it follows you forever, and it picks up all the gold that spills on the ground. It picks up all the gems and herbs, and if you like mine the rock, it picks all that up for you. It's great. And it's a cool little dog. And I guess there's other pets that you can get. I don't know if you guys saw this. This was a video that we're showing here on the video part of the podcast. They did one of those puppies interviews that are popular on YouTube, like a pet rescue brings a whole bunch of puppies. So they took some of the Diablo team to talk about the pets added to the game, and they brought them a bunch of puppies to play with while they were talking about pets. It's very cute and clever. But yeah, so I was so happy to have that dog and have it also doing work for me. All right, so I did that. I did a couple of things. You maybe in our last 10 minutes here, we'll talk about sort of like the end game. I did a few of what would probably edge into the end game, and then you'll have to tell me like what else we should be looking forward to or doing. So I did Kurast Undercity. So Kurast Undercity is kind of like a dungeon, but it's a timed run, and it reminded me, Sema, you mentioned this. What was the part of WoW?
Orgast? Oh, the horrific visions?
Horrific visions, where you have
Yeah.
a limited amount of time, and you start with like 90 seconds on the clock. And then there are mobs you can kill in there that extend the time. And there are things that you can do in there to boost your overall rewards. I thought it was fine, but I didn't like it for the reason that I described earlier, which was I'm going to look around. I want to check out the art. And you have no opportunity to do that when you're on a timer. You got to like be like running from mob to mob. It's not as dramatic as I'm making it, but you do got to be like trucking your way through there. In easy mode, I was getting them all done and then getting to the 4th tier and all of that. But do you like Kurast Undercity? Were you having fun in there, BC?
I do like it because I'm not trying to look at the scenery. Probably it's
Yeah.
if that's what you're looking to do, it's probably not the not
I'm
the
a
game,
tourist. What
game
the hell's
type
wrong
for
with
you.
me?
No, that's fine. There's definitely other stuff that you could do, but the Kurast Undercity is definitely not designed for that. For anyone who played a little bit earlier and did play some of the seasons, there was a thing called the Gauntlet that people sort of just went meh about. Like it was okay, but it wasn't wasn't really exciting. And Kurast Undercity is sort of an evolution of that, where they took the bits that did work and then redid everything else. And so the concept, like Max said, is you have 6 seconds on the clock, 2 minutes on the clock. You kill stuff, you get more time, you get more loot. And the reason I enjoy it is it sort of builds on the greater risk from D3 in the sense that there's not a fixed amount of time. Like, so there's trade-offs because you've got to make it through all 3 levels to get to the boss room in time. If a treasure goblin shows up, do I chase a treasure goblin, which these ones take a while to kill, and then risk not being able to make it? Or do I chase it and try to kill it so that I can get the extra special loot from the goblin? There's some interesting sort of trade-offs there. So I did enjoy that game mode, but I particularly like that it's designed for you to target farm certain things. For example, one of the hardest items to find is an amulet with plus to skills of the particular skill that you're after.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just never find one. You play for hundreds of hours and you just won't find one that's a maximum item level. And if you sell a really amazing item for billions of dollars, maybe you'll have enough gold to try to re-roll at the enchanter and eventually get it because the odds are just so low. But you can actually use the tributes and
Okay.
as a part of Kurast Undercity to target farm amulets that have plus to skills. And so you might not get it first time, but there's only so many skills that are on it, right? So
Yeah.
eventually you're bound to get it within a reasonable number of runs. So I like that they've added that additional way to target farm some rare items. You can also get a lot of runes from Kurast Undercity because there are attributes that specifically drop runes. So it sort of adds
It's kind of like a
another
new
place
special
to,
kind of gem where you take 2 of
Right.
them and put them together and make a new effect by combining 2 runes in a double socket. Yeah, which I kind of like.
Yeah, they're kind of different from runes in D2, so it's probably best not to. They're called the same thing, but they're a bit different. But I think they're they're a fun little additional system. I think they'll probably expand on it. And yeah, like you mentioned, you have a trigger condition and then an effect that'll happen once you've accumulated enough of a thing called offering. So you can do cool things like, for example, on my Quill Volley Spiritborn build, I have a trigger condition. Like I do something to accumulate offering, like just attacking.
Yeah.
And once I do that, then once I've built up enough offering, the Druid's Earthen Bulwark defensive skill will activate and give me a barrier. It's from a totally different class. So I kind of like where they're going with it. And they can expand, they can add more runes over time. So that's kind of a fun other thing. Now I'm a Spiritborn, but I have a Druid's ability. It gives me a bit more defense. So yeah, Kurus Undercity can be good if you're looking to target farm. It can be great for that too. And it's always nice, I think, to have ways that in a game that's based on randomized loot, ways that the randomization is like a little more common than winning the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. No, that sounds good. I didn't understand what those tributes were for at first, but now that makes a lot of sense and makes more sense. And once you get used to it, and once I get my tourism out of the way, having a useful game mode like that actually is really cool. I also did, so I got all the way to 60. I did some of the post game things. One of the things I tried to, okay, so there's that guy, the Realm Walker. I tried to do the Realm Walker because I saw it on the map. It said, here's the icon for the Realm Walker. And I went over there and there was no Realm Walker, but I was walking around and I ended up somewhere, and you got to tell me what this is. This is an end game thing, or is it not? Or did I just find an area of the map where I had to pick up like a lantern? So I'm walking around with this lantern thing, and then I would put it, you could put it in these little altars, and then it would float forward like and open up barriers for you, and then it would fall on the ground. You'd have to pick it back up again. So I had to get through this sort of like this dark zone, and I had to like go deeper and keep like going around to like the next area and the next area, and then fight a boss at the end. What what was that? What was I doing? Where was I?
That is one of the strongholds in Nahantu. So there's, for each of the areas of the world, there's 3 strongholds. People probably remember from the original game. There's 3 in Nahantu as well, and one of them has that mechanic, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was a bit. They got a bit creative. They had some sort of different mechanics. So that one, I wasn't. I went in blind, so I wasn't expecting that level of sort of mechanics to figure out the stronghold, because the original game, it was usually things like go here, kill the things, then go kill the boss, which is fine.
Right.
And I think it was one of the best sort of early game modes in the original game that I still find them really fun to do once a season. But yeah, this was a whole other level of, and the expansion generally just sort of took a lot of what was already there, but they really added a lot of mechanics to it, made it quite interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed that sort of process, and it wasn't clear which way you'd go because areas were blocked, but you couldn't see that on the map, so you'd have to backtrack and figure out how to get through. So, I enjoyed that.
I fell into it, and I did. Now that you say that it's a stronghold, you do that thing at the end where after you clear it all, you click on the little altar, and then you even get the travel point to it. I should have realized that it was a stronghold at that point, because that's exactly what strongholds do. But I did fall into it and ended up, and so it's sort of like a surprise adventure, which you're right. It was well done that way. It was pretty cool. I did Hell Tides, so that seemed relatively, it seemed refined, which I liked. So those are good. So just tell me,
there's just more events in Hell Tides now. I think it's a bit more. If anyone played season 2, where there were the green Hell Tides, they essentially just merged them into the regular Hell Tides. So there's a big boss, the Blood Maiden, that you can fight, sort of a group boss. If you're powerful enough, you can kill it on your own. And then there's just lots more world events, and you have a threat meter, a little bit like GDA or something, where once the threat meter gets full, a bunch of other monsters come and attack you, which can be fun because you can be doing one event and there's a bunch of monsters from that, and then a bunch of other monsters show up, and so
I
it
ended
feels
up getting
a little more
hunted
dangerous.
at some point. Yeah, it's not exactly clear why, but yeah. killed that maiden of whatever something multiple times because each person, if they complete enough of the Helltide, gets an opportunity to spawn it. So you could get people sort of like stacked up, spawning it, time after time. I thought that was pretty cool and worked well. And all the chests seem pretty normalized now. It seemed like they were all the same. Just gather 75 of the shards and go open a chest, which I kind of
Yeah,
liked too.
yeah, and I think it's probably worthwhile just opening the 75 ones because early in your season journey, there are a bunch of tasks to, open 5 Helltide chests, and there's quests to open 5 Helltide chests and things like that. So if you do it with the 75 ones across 75 cinders, it's quicker. But you also get living steel to kill one of the endgame bosses from them, and you'll get guaranteed one from every chest. So I think these days, rather than hunting for the chests of mystery, but often people will just sort of open as many as they can, because if you're after gear, once you're far enough along, you might be getting it other places. So you can sort of rely on it more for getting some of the boss mats or just stuff to
Got it.
salvage and get the mats and things. But if you're after better items, I think in theory the chests of mystery still do drop better items. There's probably better ways to get greater affix gear sort of later in the end game rather than Helltides. But if you're early on when you first hit end game, then Helltides are a fun way to get some gear from those chests as well. It's probably an upgrade.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother trying to get the gear early, but I did do one because I just fell into it early, and I kind of like Helltides. It's a little bit grindy, but in a good way. So I like halfway through leveling, I was like at level 30 and did a Helltide like for like a half hour, and I got a lot of gear, but it's lower level and you're gonna replace it, and then you feel bad replacing a legendary with a blue or something. But yeah, it's good to use. It's good even along the way. So there's probably 2 bigger things that I have no clue on. So tell me if I should go after or what the deal is with the Realm Walker and the Pit. Because I've heard of these things, and and now I just saw a picture of the Realm Walker in this video here. Otherwise, I don't know what they are. So tell me about that.
Yeah, the Realm Walker is the season 6 mechanic, and the short version is it's a monster. It shows up on the map. It spawns a bunch of other monsters. You kill them to make it angry. Then you can target it and kill it. And when it dies, it spawns a portal. You go in that portal, and it's a mini dungeon. You work your way through it, and you can select your reward at the end. So you can choose to get gold or items or herbs and things that you might need. And once you get into the torment difficulties, you can probably the best one is you can get they're called opals. They're another version of a potion that will increase your chances of cause monsters to drop stones that you can use to activate the pit, boss mats, and things that you'll need in endgame. So that's probably the most popular one once you hit endgame, because the more more boss mats and mats for the pit that you have, the more you can continue doing those activities. The other great thing about the opals when you're leveling up is that they give 15% multiplicative experience, and they stack on top of your potions. And potions are 8%. So while leveling, the standard practice, at least earlier in the season, was to go kill a Realm Walker, get enough opals to be able to just keep having an opal and a potion active at all times, and you'd be getting 8% and 15% on top of that bonus experience. So that's pretty useful while leveling. I enjoy doing that, just because I flew through. So when I finished the story, I was, I think, level 58. And that's the story of the expansion, not the like post story quests. So you mentioned,
I was barely running potions even.
Yeah.
I kept forgetting to even run a potion. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, once you hit 60, I've heard divided opinions about whether it's worth doing the Realm Walkers or not. if you're after the boss mats, it's probably useful just to collect more of those. But it does take quite a while. So they made some changes this week where they move more quickly. If you kill the monsters more quickly, they finish more quickly. So you're not waiting around, because one of the things was it would take a long time for it to sort of do its walk and then spawn the portal, and for you to go in and get your opals. So as always with action RPGs, people wanted it to happen faster, so they sped that up, which probably makes it a little more worthwhile spending that time versus doing something else. Because once you're hitting endgame, you've hit level 60 max, probably the first thing that you want to be doing is clearing a pit level 20 so that you get access to the torment difficulties. Because once you're on torment 1, any item in the game can drop, including every mythic unique item, in theory you could just be on torment 1 forever and gear out your character and be the best kid character possible. It'll take you a little longer than if you do it on higher difficulties, but that's really the minimum you want to get to if you're planning to continue playing and gearing up your character. And to clear a pit level 20 is not very hard. They're like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3, with some slight improvements. And to clear pit level 20 and get access to torment difficulty 1, honestly, you can even clear a pit level 35 to get access to torment level 2 if you just follow some kind of build guide that has a sort of a half decent build. You put legendary aspects on all your gear, and you temper it, which is a new crafting mechanic. It adds a couple of additional affixes, and you put gems in or runes. If you do those 3 things, which are not hard to do, I was in normal the whole time during the story, got to level 60, did those things, and I cleared pit level 20, and then I just kept going and cleared pit level 35 without making really any changes to my build.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy to get to as far as torment 2, with as long as you've got a build that has some synergy, and you have your legendary aspects and your gems, and tempering especially gives you a lot of power. And once you're there, then a whole bunch of stuff opens up. And so if I'm not sure if you're planning to continue playing Max or just sort of take in the scenery, both are valid. Do what's fun for you. But for anyone who is sort of getting to the end of the story or planning to do it sometime soon, that's what I'd say. If you do want to keep gearing up and getting more powerful, that'd be the first place to go, is the pit, which is just like Greater Rifts.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't get there, but that might be fun to go check out.
Yeah, it's also probably the most efficient activity in the end game overall for everything. It's got probably the best experience XP gain per time spent, as long as you can do them efficiently. It helps you level up your glyphs now. They moved that from Nightmare Dungeons to the pit, which makes a lot more sense because people just want to reach the end to upgrade their glyphs, and that's the whole point of the pit. Whereas Nightmare Dungeons, there's objectives and things like that. So you get glyph XP. That's another big source of power. You also get obols at the end, the currency to buy stuff off the gambling vendor.
Yeah.
And pro tip, if you do keep playing Max, is that the best source of uniques is to gamble. You will get one every 4 maybe items that you gamble for. I mean, I've gotten half a dozen. I haven't done that much gambling, and within a half a dozen uniques, I've sort of I got both of the good staffs for a Spiritborn. I got one or two of the rings. I got the helmet, the really good helmet that I need for cool volley builds. So and it'll only take me maybe 4 items for each one or something. So the gambling vendor is very OP. Definitely try to get obols and gamble for the types of items that you need and get those uniques.
Yeah. So, I mean, to sum that up, there's a lot there. There's a lot there in the end game. I mean, I think it's definitely what I've seen, and I think that was one of the things people were hoping for more of. I would say overall, Diablo 4 has really developed a lot, and they put a lot into it. It's what you've been along for the whole ride. This seems like it's really taken it up another level on top of all the good work that they've done since launch. I would imagine.
Yeah, I think the community feedback on the expansion, I think, has been overwhelmingly positive because there's just a lot more to do now once you get through the story. We spoke of the pit, hell tides. You can do whispers in the hell tides, the bounties, from D3 that
Yep.
they're called whispers. So that gives you another thing to do in hell tides. We talked about nightmare dungeons, which they've improved now because you don't need to do them for glyph XP. But when you do them, you get bonus for being a tourist, Max, because every monster you kill has a chance to drop masterworking materials, and so you get masterworking materials to upgrade your gear by doing nightmare dungeons, and there's a reward if you want to kill lots of monsters, or you go the wrong way, it kind of doesn't matter because you're just getting more materials. And the objectives that they have in there, like, oh, I've got to this pedestal, I need a bloodstone, I need to go find the bloodstone, and then I go find it, and then I carry it back. Oh, I need a second bloodstone. That now doesn't need to happen. You could just go to the end and kill the boss. But if you do complete those objectives, it opens a treasure room, which gives you some
Which I did.
gold and
Yeah, in
items.
the few dungeons that I did, I said I 100%ed. I killed everything and I opened every door and I moved all the runes. Got those extra treasures and that kind of thing. Yeah, okay, that sounds like it's up my alley.
Yeah, there's also infernal hordes, which probably won't be because it's an arena where waves of monsters, and that's probably the second thing after the pit to focus on. It's got great XP, and you can get chests at the end that are customized based on what you're looking for. So if you want guaranteed greater affix items that have sort of that 50% higher roll, you can get them from one chest. If you want gold, it's probably the best source of gold is complete an infernal horde. You get millions and millions of gold. But by the time you get to higher difficulties, you might get 50, 60 million gold just from one infernal hordes run. And then you can also get crafting materials. So that's a great source of and a little bit different sort of waves of monsters coming at you. You can fight two butchers at once if you're lucky. And then there's tormented bosses as well. There's now 7 Uber Lilith, but 6 others, Duriel and Endariel, and sort of 4 other newer ones that haven't existed before. That they're a good source of materials and the mythic uniques as well. So everyone can get a Shaco hopefully.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked
uniques.
about the raid as well, the four player raid that they
That's
added
right.
as a
See,
part of
there's
the expansion.
just so much, which is great. So like Sema, as you sort of said, like in the intro, we were talking about, I don't know what other game we were talking about, but people, like a game getting good feedback and people liking it and people having a good time. That's just so nice to hear,
Yeah, it is.
And I think that's really the kind of the position we're in right now with Diablo, which is really good. Good for them, good for the players, and good for anybody who plays Diablo to have this level of content now available.
It's also
Yeah, I
nice
mean,
too that the players are able to make that turnaround too.
Yeah.
Like the initial response to Diablo 4 was negative.
Yeah, that the communities come around, and maybe it's new players. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
maybe it's completely different people doing it, but yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I completely agree. Well, awesome.
you'll have to keep playing, Max, so we can do the Dark Citadel together. We can get a group together.
The idea of group content in it, does have a little bit of an appeal there. So I gotta do a little bit of New World this week, but coming back and you get that gear grind itch, and it's a fun thing to do in these ARPGs. So that's what it's all about. So I could see getting back in there and doing it. Cool. Well, thanks a ton for coming on and talking Diablo with us. I knew you'd be an awesome expert.
Yeah, expert. Yeah, it was great to spend time with you too again, BC.
So I will keep you on.
Yeah, great to chat to you guys again as well.
I'm gonna have to keep you on speed dial because you pointed me at the good build for leveling, and then I looked at endgame, and my build is not an endgame build. So that was one stopping point. Also, I kind of had no idea what to do next, and the Paragon board made my eyes glaze over I've done it before, but so I'll keep you on speed dial to get all the tips for my pit build and that kind of thing, and then and see how to start building up, and we can do the dark citadel and pull Sema in, because it's gonna happen. No, we need to build up our WoW characters to go raid with Sema, I think is the real answer there.
That would be so fun.
And then we can all meet back up in SWOTOR on any given Tuesday or Thursday and have some
Very
fun there
true.
as well. All right, so I think that is a good rundown of Diablo 4. So fun to talk about a game that's doing well and has got a lot of great content in it. That's one of these big ones that I'm glad it's not a hate fest. I'm sure we'll get there, because people will find some way to
After
make.
they've played hundreds of hours, it's like,
yeah.
now there's nothing for me to do.
I played 1,000 hours, and I hated every minute of it. All right, but we are good for now. As always, all the feed and subscribe links for us are on newoverlords.com. BC, where can people reach out to you besides the AIE Discord, which is probably a great place?
Yeah, probably the AIE Discord is the best place. There's a Diablo channel specifically, so
Oh, that's right.
if you're playing and you want to group up or ask questions, hit us up there.
So check that out. That's aie-guild.org to get into the Discord and get into that Diablo channel. And obviously come chat with us in our Discord for the show at newoverlords.com/Discord. And while they exist, you can follow for status updates and when the podcast is going live on all of the social networks, and we'll keep you up to date there too. And with that, we will talk to you soon.
Later, everyone.